Welcome to the Heather Pity Podcast. This podcast is about going after the life that you're made for, not just surviving life, but actually thriving. So thanks for joining us. Let's jump in. Hello, Joe. It's so good to see you back here on my podcast.
Hey, great to be here, Heather. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. I'm really excited about our topic today. And maybe excited is not the best choice of words because we're going to talk about pain through clarity. I don't mean to be laughing. That's awful that I'm laughing about that. But it's this idea that pain gets to grow us as an individual and as a person. It's never fun to go through. And that's always where I give respect to it. But for people like you and for me, where we've had a lot of conversations around this topic, and now on the other side of some of these more painful times in our life, it's safe to start talking about some of this in a way that allows you to start sharing some of the life lessons you learn from it. So taking a more of a deeper dive into this conversation, I wanted to step into this with you because I know you've done your work in this. So this is part of why I'm bringing Joe back on my show for my listeners, is because what I know for Joe, and we've been friends for a long time now, is he's a very intentional individual who works hard at what I call the growth work, the inner work. And I believe leadership comes from within as a leadership coach. So I focus a lot of work on the inner work. So Joe, this is a little bit of why I wanted you back on my show to take a deep dive on some of this. And maybe I'll start what's called a deep dive series so that we can prepare our listeners that we're going to dive a little deeper and get below the surface of how pain has clarified us. I'm just going to jump right in. You want to start there, Joe, and give
I'm
some
ready.
thoughts on that?
I was thinking about that. Pain is an interesting topic because we all go through it, but we don't like to really talk about it. And then there's I was thinking through, there's different types of pain. There's pain that people cause to us. There's pain that we cause to other people. And then there's pain that we cause to ourselves. Sometimes I think we can really bring ourselves down, in our own thought life when it comes to who we are as people. And so pain has this way of entering into our lives, and it's something we all go through. And I think that one of the things that gets associated with pain when it takes a bad swing is fear. And I think that when you take it to a deeper level, everyone has to deal with that fear, fear of growing and changing and seeking out to be a new person in the middle of what, for most of us, when we go through pain, it's one of the hardest things we go through in life. And we all go through different levels of it, and so it's just nice to be on the other side of it and not be directly in it right now.
Yes.
I find that really encouraging, because when you're going through it, you don't want to, you know what I mean? It's a journey that we all take, and we like to be on the back end of it, not on the front end of it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man. And I got to witness that firsthand with you. And I know you've witnessed it with me as well, just because of our long connection. I guess I want to start right there. How has pain been a teacher to you in growing your clarity, confidence, courage? We talk a lot about 3C living, but how has it contributed to that as you reflect back in hindsight?
Yeah, I think pain for me, or loss of something that you wanted to be in your life. And it could just be who you wanted to be, or a job you wanted to get, or, now that I'm getting older too, the loss of loved ones. And I just feel that when you go through that, you see pain is it gives you life in a certain way where it makes reality seem so much more beautiful that you get to live, and you don't get forever. And it just clarifies who you really want to be and who you want to spend time with, and what job you really want to give your life to. And I think that, so pain has really clarified not only who I want to be as a person, but what I want to be doing with my life. And so, yeah.
I love that you shared that. And it makes me think about myself and what I'm going through right now, it's a pain of loss. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I'm launching my second and last child, Joe.
Yeah.
And I launched my first one 2 years ago into college, and she's 19 now. And I felt the pain and the loss, but I'm telling you, this second one, my baby, my last one, and visualizing my life without kids in my home every day, man, this one's a doozy. And I can feel just this, it lingers, and it's accessing other places of loss. So I guess this is kind of what I want to ask you. How do you navigate these deep waters? And it's not like we can go live on an island and recover from this, right? I'm working full time. You're working full time as an educator over there in Saudi Arabia, changing the world. You got to keep showing up every day. You've got a child and a wife. Yeah, exactly. We're trying, right? So I guess, how do you integrate that? How does this change you in what you are doing and living day to day? Because you can't just step out of your life.
Right. I think, well, thank God I have a good coach. So I have to say, like, one of the ways to deal with pain is you need to get outside of your own thinking, because like you said, pain can become a ruminating thought that you focus on it, and then you're feeling down, and then, you start to feel down about other things in your life. And so that's not a bad thing, but the thing that pulls you up for air is being able to talk about it openly with a trusted person that has confidence in you, and knows your story. And so I think that was a huge lifesaver, because it was perspective shifting, like one little thing at a time. And you don't need to jump to the good really quickly. I think there's a space and place to embrace the pain that we do feel and let it really resonate in our heart, because depending on what that pain is, like the pain of a lost one, like that hurts, and it's okay to like feel that loss. Like I recently lost my grandma, and she just passed away literally like a week ago. And I live overseas and I work overseas, and I always thought I was going to get to see her again. And I had built up in my mind, like, oh, this next summer, I'm going to go see her, because it's been a long time. Haven't been back to California for many years. And I want to be able to like see her one last time. And, she passed, and I'm overseas and I'm working. I'm not able to be there at the funeral. And so just losing her was hard. And I think for me, it's so fresh in my brain. When pain comes in, we try to like, oh, let's not let this happen. Let's not think about that. Let's navigate. Let's eat cookies, like let's
the more the better
to make us happy, and like eat a whole tub of ice cream.
Oh yeah.
So I think the thing that really has changed within me is, and the people that I respect, is the ability to be brave and just embrace the reality of what you're really feeling. And I do feel loss, and I feel sad, and I feel hurt. And I feel like, would I change anything? And the thing is that with what I've been going through in my life, like I wouldn't change it. I know I didn't get to see her, but the choices that I did make, I'm happy with. And the thing is like, I'll explain that, like my wife, Sammy, she lost her mom and her dad over the last few years. And that's where I was spending my time, because they were going through cancer. And I was spending my time going back to Colorado and seeing them and spending time with them and getting time with them. And I thought my grandma was going to hang in there, and like everything was going to be fine. And then, so not only did we lose my wife's parents, who really were like surrogate parents to me in adulthood, and now I lost my grandma. And so that was really hard.
All in one year, Joe?
What's that?
All in 1 year?
Yeah. Well, no. We lost Sammy's mom about 2 2.5 years ago. And
Okay.
then we lost her dad about a year and a half ago. And then I lost my grandma like this last week. So it's been over the
Mm.
last few years that we've slowly, and it's like I'm getting old, you know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
not that old. I'm like going to be 40, but
Yeah.
I'm old
Mm-hmm.
enough to like experience that loss. And I think the bravest
Mm-hmm.
thing I can do right now and the people I need in my life are the people that need to tell me it's okay to feel all the feels. It's okay
Mm.
to embrace, that loss
Mm-hmm.
and feel it, because I think within feeling it, even though that's the hard part, it allows us to also let it go
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
move back to our life and
Mm.
move back to who we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lose people, like you realize quickly, oh man, I'm not going to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there something about my life that I want to change? Like, what would I change? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was thinking about my grandma. And then I thought back to all my choices of like travels and like seeing family. And
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't change anything, but I still
Mm-hmm.
lost my grandma. And so that's kind of where I'm at in this process. But going through it with Sammy's parents, I know that that pain will be there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's reality.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like my strength will be regained and my
Mm-hmm.
heart and my passion for life
Mm-hmm.
will be better. And the good thing about all of this is that we become more intentional about our
Mm.
life. We
Mm-hmm.
become more intentional about what we say, how we
Mm-hmm.
say it, and what we do, because, you know, it reminds me of like Gandalf in Lord of
Mm.
the Rings.
Yeah.
And I forget who the Hobbit was, but he says he was like afraid to die at a certain point. He's like, they're going to go into battle and they're about to die. And he says something, and then Gandalf replies with, "Oh, this isn't the end, my friend. Like
Mm.
heaven is there
Mm-hmm.
waiting for you on the other
Mm-hmm.
side, and there's so much more."
Mm.
And so I think the other thing that helps me navigate these things is my faith
Mm.
and in my maker.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows me to really hold the space of loss, but also hold the hope that the ones that I love have gone to a better
Mm.
place.
Wow.
And yeah, and so
Mm-hmm.
this is where I'm at, and I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
to go ahead of it. But the people like in my life that I've
Mm-hmm.
admired have been the people that can embrace fully the life that they've been given in the moment they've been given it. But at the same time, they hold that hope. And
Mm.
then, and I think the hope is like another thing that Gandalf said is like about the hobbits is that
We all
he
need a
believes,
Gandalf, don't we?
yeah, he believes
Yeah.
that it's the small kindnesses of life in ordinary life that make the
Mm.
biggest differences in the world.
Yeah.
And I think that when you lose something or you go through pain, you become a kinder person.
Mm-hmm.
And where I want to go with that kindness is it's easy to be kind to other people, but you got
Mm-hmm.
to be kind to yourself.
I love that you said that, because I've also seen the reverse happen. Because life feels so harsh, what do? We close ourselves off from the world. We don't want to feel it all, and we can become meaner. You actually have
Right.
a choice to go either way. And this is where, if we can have this conversation to say, I am committed to pain changing me for the better, not the worse. That's all I can land on. And because we know when we're going through it, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel safe. And the vulnerability and the amount of loss that we're feeling is just, it feels cruel. I
Mm.
was on a call yesterday, and this is with a leader who had just lost his mother. And I said, I'm so sorry for your loss. And he said, life can be so cruel. That's all he said. And it just really struck me of, yes, isn't that the first feeling we feel in the middle of loss and pain? We're grappling with the harshness of our world and our life at times. And the grieving makes that rawness so sensitive. And I see some people using it to change them for the better. And I see some people say, I'll never feel this way again. which is impossible, right? It's like saying, I'll never take a breath of oxygen again. We live in a world that is broken. So my call to people, and really I'll say my call to myself, and in doing this, I call it out to other people to join this commitment of saying, yes, honor the pain, recognize the pain, and allow it to change you for the better. And I guess that's what I love that you're saying, Joe. And I want to go after some of the beliefs that haunt us in the middle of this pain.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think one of the biggest ones is, why is this happening to me? You know, why is this happening to me? Why did I deserve this? You know? And I think, again, it's like, the thing I love about the people that you bring close into your life and in your inner circle is that they'll sit with you in that moment and they'll just be there for you. So I think having a friend through this is huge. I really feel for the people that feel like they're disconnected and they don't have those close ties, because that's really hard. And it's hard to navigate that all alone, you know? And so it's one of those things where it's like, you think you're alone and you're the only one that's gone through it, but then you talk to somebody and you realize you're not alone, and that many people have gone through it. And yeah. And so I think for me, my inner voice has been a tough one to navigate, especially when it comes to pain and things like this, because another loss that I had in my life was grieving the pain that my dad was never going to be who I wanted him to be. And I had a very rough childhood, you know that. And my dad was very abusive with his words and his language and his actions. And it created in me a harsh personal voice that I spoke to myself. And I grew up with feeling like I had to be perfect. And if I wasn't, then I was very hard on myself and I wasn't good enough and all of that. And so when it comes to these real things that happen in our life through pain, you know, and like the loss of like my dad, you know, not being the man that I wanted him to be, I think it forms an inner voice in our head. And, you know, we don't realize it, but pain brings that out because we become very aware of our own thinking. And I think, again, the voice that I've had to slow down is, wait a minute, like, I am enough in this moment.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I have what it takes. I have what it takes to go through this pain. Like, I'm going to be okay. And another thing that I've had to tell myself is, you know, that I don't need to be perfect to be accepted. And so, yeah, I think that pain really turns us inward and we start to self-reflect. And the hope is that we would use our powers for good and turn toward good. But it does swing people the wrong way sometimes. And I would just say to them, I hope that they don't feel alone, because I don't want them to feel alone. And I hope that they have a friend who can kind of speak into that, that they allow into their heart, you know, and that's a vulnerable space. And when you talk about real life, like, there's a lot of bravery in being vulnerable and sharing really what goes on in your heart. And so I think that's the first step. But then also, like, one thing I've learned over my life is that your story is a personal thing that you need to honor. And not everybody's ready to like hear all of your story, you know?
Yeah. My wife made that mistake before.
Yeah. And so like you get to be reserved in who you share your pain with.
Yeah. Very selective.
But I would say you want to share it with somebody. Don't sit with that. Because again, what happens is you're stuck with your own thinking. And if you're stuck with your own painful thoughts and that's all you're stuck with, like, that can be a very hard situation. And then what ends up happening is it starts to show in other parts of your life, and you start to get angry more often. you could lead toward depression, mental health becomes an issue. And so the way you get out of that is you get outside of yourself and you get outside of your own voice and you talk to people. And so that's been a lifesaver for me. And then those small perspective shifts, when someone else gives you a different perspective, when you embrace that, over time, they add up and you eventually get your footing back and you get back to the person that you are. And if that's an encouraging person, you're back to that. If that's, I consider myself more of a motivational person. I like to be motivating.
Yeah.
I don't like to sit and dwell on the bad things of life. I love to talk about the good things that are going on. And so when I get back to that person, I realize, okay, yeah, I'm back. I can take a deep breath. That was a hard road, but I embraced it. And I'm thankful for the embracing part of it, because if you don't, you kind of show back up to your life a little bit broken. And I want to be whole. And by that, I want to be whole, like put together, And so I think to be a whole person, you have to go through that pain, embrace it so that you can come back as a wholehearted person.
I love that you said that. I love that you said wholeness. And I want to circle back around. Hang on to that thought if you've got a thought still coming, because I want to circle back around to something you said that was so poignant earlier about really how pain can be isolating because you think you're the only one going through it. And one of the false beliefs that can creep up is I have to go it alone and I'm the only one experiencing this. One of the ways I've had to really be conscious of this, of making sure that I don't isolate in pain, and that's my tendency, is to really hang on to those beliefs, false beliefs. I have to really reach for more of this true belief that says, there are people here that love me and want to share it with me. But to your point, I got to be selective on that. And, I too I'm a person of faith. And so leaning into my maker and my creator, and I'm just saying, show me who to speak to and say it. And it makes me think of last night I was with a group of just really long-term close friends. And they say, hey, Heath, how are you doing? We want to talk a little bit about our words for the year. So I just want to hear how you're doing. It was a signal to me that I could choose, I'm doing great. Or I could be transparent because this is a safe place of people who really care. And I said, well, my word for the year is welcome. I just didn't realize what I was going to be welcoming in. I am welcome in so many beautiful, amazing things, podcasts and books and conversations and the people I'm meeting. I'm just loving my career. What I'm having to grapple with is this deep sense of loss and sadness and the emptiness and what's next for me. And being able to say that and go there and tell them at the depth, I'm grieving and I'm sad. And when I think about my last child leaving, I could just sit down and weep. And that's about all I could say about it. Or I might start weeping on air here, Joe. Right. But their response was just so beautiful. The next day I had two of my friends just reach out and say, I know exactly what you're talking about. Let's go for a walk together. They knew exactly what I needed to honor me in that space. And you have that tendency to want to isolate because it's so vulnerable and you do feel alone. And then sometimes you reach out and nobody reaches back out. I had to kind of release that expectation of they may reach out, they may not. That's not the purpose of me saying this. The purpose of me saying this is to be true and authentic and to be whole. I love that you said that word whole. And so as you are committing to that and looking at that in your own personal life, how do you still honor that and work every day? That's right. What I see a lot of leaders really struggling with. And we talk about work-life balance. This is where I think the core of some of our work-life balance, we have to start opening this conversation. It runs so much deeper than just 5 tips for self-care. It's some right. of these really like hard things. We're losing parents. We're going through divorces. We're navigating depression, mental illness. We're navigating all these hard spaces and we're still trying to show up at work every day. How do you not cut that part of yourself off and just use work as this total excuse to completely disengage? How do you stay whole and bring that in a way that's appropriate? And it's not bringing some of that stuff to your colleagues. I guess I want you to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought up leaders and leadership, because I feel that leaders sometimes are the ones that feel the most alone, because they
Yes.
think they have to have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that they're just people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay for them to not be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's okay for them. Now, again, be selective about who you share with, but at the same time, like, you don't need to have it all together. I think that's one of the biggest false beliefs, is that, oh, I'm a leader, so I must have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Or the old saying of, well, leave your feelings and your emotions at the entranceway to your job. And then
Yeah.
when you go in, put your game face on,
Yeah.
Although avoiding how we really feel and going to work and acting like we're okay, although we can go through life like that, what always happens is there's a breakdown at some point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whether that's immediate or whether that's years down the road, and whether that's openly in front of other people or whether it's privately, there's a breakdown that happens. And that's why it's important to process what you're going through and embrace it. And that's why I so admire those people who, when they go through a hard time, they're fully invested in embracing the moment that they're in. They don't skip it. It hurts, but they sit in it. They embrace it, and then they turn and think about how they can live a better life. And when they come out all the better, it makes it so attractive that I want to go through life like that. I don't want to live with regret. I don't want to hold back, or feel like I missed out, because one day we're going to be 80 or 90 years old looking back at our life. And we're going to wonder, did I have the courage to really embrace the moment I was in? And I want to know that I had that courage. And it doesn't start when I'm 80. It starts right now. And I think that that's how you show up every day. Because when I lost my grandma, I still had to go in and teach my students. I still had to put a smile on my face, and I still had to be the motivational person that I am to them, to believe that they can learn mathematics and they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so I think that, when you're able to embrace really all that you're going through, it allows you to still show up authentically. And when you start to avoid those spaces in your heart of pain and loss, you show back up to work a little bit, not all there. And the word that you used to have, just isn't coming out of your heart the way it used to. And so I think the biggest word I'm coming to conclusion with is authenticity. Is that if you're authentically embracing all that you're going through in your life, when you show up to work, you'll still be that authentic person. I'm not saying bare your soul to everybody, because it would be totally inappropriate for me to like bare my soul to like the students I work with or my colleagues. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not what it's about. That's not what I mean. What I mean is when you're embracing your own personal life and the pain that you're going through authentically, it allows you to still show up to work and be that good person that you want to be.
Yes.
And you don't miss those little things.
Yeah.
Because when you avoid things in your own life, you start to avoid things in other people's lives. And then you start to miss life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss life. Like, I want to embrace it. And that's what the pain does, is it makes you it encourages you to want to embrace more fully the life that you've been given.
That is so, well, mic drop. Let me just start there. That's just so beautiful. This is why I'm so wanted to talk with you about this, because I knew you would have so much wisdom and insight, not from a lofty perch or from a pedestal, but from getting right down there, on feet on the ground, boots on the ground, rolling your sleeves up and saying, this is how I grapple with it and show up wholeheartedly. And I guess I want to ask you, you said a really great phrase and it made me think about this question. What are some of the flags that you see in you? Because I've got some flags that I see when I know I'm not dealing with it and I'm not showing up to work wholeheartedly. And you're right. Most people don't know what I'm going through when I work in the professional realm. They don't know in my private life. I like to keep it separate. But I also know that when I'm not honoring that space of loss or grief, some of the flags that show up for me is just very heightened irritability, lots of judgment, impatience. What are some of the flags you see?
Yeah, you named them. I get
Yeah.
I get short. I get short with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the patience to wholeheartedly have empathy. And as a
Empathy.
teacher, and one thing that's coming out in workplaces more and more is that gift of social emotional intelligence and the gift of being able to be empathetic. And they're calling it like an IQ level now. And so it's starting to show up everywhere in all organizations, no matter where you work.
EQ. Yeah. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah. And so I think that your EQ gets dropped.
Yeah.
It gets dropped because when you're avoiding things in your life, like I said, you start to avoid other things and you start to close yourself off. And when you choose to do that, you don't have the ability to social emotionally and intelligently like embrace the life that other people are going through. For instance, like my principal, like, you know, he was one person that I shared the loss of our parents with and my, my grandma. And because I knew that like he needed to know, that I was going to be okay, that everything, but I wanted him to know what was going on because he's so supportive. And also I work overseas, so he gave us permission to like go back home and like go to the funerals and things. So, that was the one person at work that I did share with, but he didn't share with anybody else. And, that I was thankful for that because, again, not everybody deserves to hear the whole story of everything. You know what I mean? They're not the right person. And so maybe that's, I don't know if I want to say that, but I think one of the flags again are just getting back to that point is being short with people, being impatient, and then just irritability gets increased. And the things that used to make you happy aren't making you happy. So like going for a jog, out in nature, which always would bring life. If you're feeling down and out, and you're being irritable, you're going to be on that run and you're not going to be enjoying it.
Yeah.
You're going to be thinking about all the other things. And then those thoughts spiral. And then you eventually say something and you put your foot in your mouth in a way that doesn't represent your character. And then that's when it affects your work.
Yeah.
And other people are like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like you. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so, and then other people will start to ask questions and stuff. And so that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, like, the one thing that I always learned young in life is that the truth always comes out.
Yeah.
And the truth will come out because it is more powerful than living a lie.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing, but you got to embrace that.
Yes. Yes.
Because I remember, this is a silly story, but one thing about the truth, it's like I was playing basketball at a friend's house, and then he went inside and his parents had Christmas lights set up, and I shot the basketball and I knocked one of the lights and broke it. And then his mom came out. It was like, or sorry, I went inside to eat some lunch with my friend, and his mom's like, hey, someone broke a light outside. What happened there? And I was like, oh, it wasn't me. And I was like fourth grader,
Yeah.
I felt so bad about it.
Yeah.
When I graduated college, I saw my friend's parents eating at a restaurant, and I went in and I was like, hey, I got to tell you, like
it was me.
It was me. I broke that light. And they were like, Joe, oh my gosh, like if that's the worst thing you've ever done, like don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
But that is just a little story to like say that's a little bit silly of a story.
Yeah.
But the truth will always come out. And again, whether it's privately just between us and our faith, or whether that is to somebody else, it'll come out. And it's the same thing with pain and loss.
Yeah.
If we don't go through the healthy steps, and if we're really stuck, I really encourage getting a counselor. Like, they can walk you through the process of grief. They can walk you through, the thinking processes that you need and stuff. And so there's help available. And so none of us ever have to feel stuck. And so when we do go through it a healthy way, we come back more whole, and then we can really be present, and we're not as irritable, and instead of being irritable, when we're actually healthy, when we're dealing with it, we come back with more empathy and a higher IQ or EQ. Because because we, I don't know why it works that way, but that's in my experience, like, that's what happens to you. And maybe it's because you had the courage to go to a space that a lot of people are afraid to go to. And then you're going to be okay. And so you can tell other people you'll be okay. And I think maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. And me, I like to get concrete, use the word healthy steps. Can you give our listeners some ideas on what are some healthy steps? And I'm going to preface that with, I believe one of the mistakes we make as humans, and what I encounter in my work with people, is they don't want to change their life to take those healthy steps. They want to keep living like they always do. And one of the hard truths I have to tell them is, you're grieving. Please put it down in first gear. Stop trying to live in fifth gear. That's the number one thing I have to say. And it's like they fight me on it, but it's not me they're fighting. I know that they're fighting themselves. If they don't want to change their life to deal with this stuff, they want to keep working, which is one of the meanest things we do to ourselves. So can you give our audience a little bit of ideas of some healthy steps that you do to slow it down and put it in first gear when you're grieving?
Oh, yeah. I think the first thing is to get it outside of your brain by journaling. If you leave a thought ruminating in your head, it's going to come back even in your subconscious, you know what I mean? And it's going to come back and come back and come back. And that's where the irritability comes in, And so I think writing it down in a journal, even if you're not a journaler, like, just, okay, I'm thinking these things, like, write it all down. There's something that happens when you get it outside of yourself and onto paper. Another thing would be, like I've said, talk to a close friend, share what's going on. And when you see their response, embrace their empathy, embrace their kindness, because when people aren't going through it, it's a lot easier for them to show kindness toward you. And so, but you got to show that kindness toward yourself. And I think that's another thing that you had mentioned, is put it back into first gear. It's okay to go slow during these times, because life is going to go fast again soon enough. And if you give yourself the amount of time that you need, and you come back more whole, you'll be ready for that super speed of life again. But if not, there's going to be a broken part of you that shows back up. And if that adds up over time, like, when you're going a direction, if you go off 1 degree, it's fine for a little while. But when you go 100 miles, you're completely somewhere else. And so I think it's those micro steps that you do, journaling, talking to a friend, going for a walk, listening to music, putting on a podcast,
inviting in kind voices. I'm adding to your list as you're talking, because my other thing too is because I love achieving, cutting my list in half. Instead of trying to do 10 things every day, if I'm really in the thick of it, it's like one thing. I remember when I was dealing with a very deep depression in my late 20s, I had one thing on my agenda that day: walk my dog. And here I went from this massive high achieving, getting my master's, working on my career, to grappling with some very deep stuff that I had never grappled with before. And I could feel the humiliation of, this is really what my life has come to.
Yeah.
I think purpose is get out and walk my dog today, because that's all I can handle.
Right.
And I think I'll always remember that. And I'm 51, and it's like, 30 years or so later, but I'm listening to that going, Yeah. And remember, when you're suffering or when you're moving through pain, stop trying to keep up with a to-do list that when you're not is very energizing and exciting. But now it would be cruel to try and keep up with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that was one of the wisdom pieces that why I told my specific boss about what was going on. Um, because I wanted him to know that, I'm going to be okay, but I just wanted to bring him into the circle. And so I think, um, yeah, going back to it, don't make a big long list of things. Be easy on yourself. That all goes back to being kind and speaking kindly to yourself. So I think the question that I would have for a friend who's going through this is, what are some kind things that you're doing for yourself?
I love that.
And yeah, and then, you know, like you said, don't make a big list of it, but what are a couple kind things you can do for yourself each day? Because that self-care does turn back around and it renews your perspective. One thing that I had to embrace was just like prayer. And I had a daily prayer, sometimes when I was going through so much pain of like childhood things, the only way I could get myself out of my head was to totally get focused on something else. And I realized that what I was putting into myself by what I was reading was going to impact who I was going to become. And so I found a prayer that would walk me through and embrace my identity and who I am as a person. And that prayer took about 15 minutes, but I dedicated myself to it. And over years, it's turned into a lifeline that I pull to, and it's really, really helped me. But other people do meditation. I would say same thing. It's meditating on those good things that you want to, bring yourself back to. Gratitude, I would say, is the hardest one to do when you're in the middle of pain and loss, but probably the most healthiest thing you could do for yourself and being kind to yourself. So, if the smallest thing you could do every day was just say 5 things you're thankful for. I'm thankful for my wife. I'm thankful for my daughter. I'm thankful for my job. I'm thankful that I get to live with the purpose and, work and live my life's calling. I'm thankful for the food that I have on my plate today. I mean, just that gratitude. And research and science research is showing it relieves stress. It helps you get back to your center. And so I think gratitude is a huge helpful practice with all of this.
I love that. I guess as we wrap up here, I think another thought that's hitting me, and I want to leave our listeners with this idea of keep it simple, slow it down and keep it simple. And again, this is probably going out to all my fellow achievers, myself included, where we can't even take a master plan for how to navigate our days, right? We have to keep it simple. So I guess I would say, how do you just keep it simple? You mentioned a prayer, which I love. When you don't have your own prayer ability, I don't know how else to say it, but I'm like, I don't got any good prayer thought coming to my mind right now to reach out to my faith. It's just all I can think of is help me God, to be able to lean into someone else's words that pray a little bit more of how you are looking forward, meditating on, I think is one way to keep it simple. But I would say, how would you encourage your listeners to keep it simple?
Yeah, I think the simplest thing would be, it's okay to slow down. I mean, those words mean so much to me, especially from a friend, but I would just ask myself in the morning, what do I need today? Sometimes in life, it's okay to like make it about you. And I think when you're going through loss, that's one of those times.
Gosh, that's beautiful.
And
I
so,
love that.
Yeah, I would just say, wake up and say, well, what do I need today? And I think that's slowing it down. that question would slow it down for me.
Mm. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for helping me tackle a hard, deep, difficult, challenging conversation and keeping it enjoyable and hopeful. You were the person I knew I wanted to talk to about this as I'm grappling with this every day. So thank you for just being honest and showing up and offering both your authenticity and just the hope that you hold during pain.
Thank you, Heather. I really appreciate it. I feel honored. Thank you.
Oh. All right, my friends, I hope you got something out of this that you can take into your own life, and we would love to hear from you. Please feel free to just reach out to me. Many of you have my email, my phone number, my text, whatever. We'd love to hear from you because this is a lot of the conversations that I'm grappling with each day. And I want to serve our community, our worlds of just how we are grappling with pain and living wholeheartedly, not letting us take us out, but how it's helping us to step into a more wholehearted living existence so that we can live the life we're made for. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. And please drop a review. It really helps us out wherever you're listening from. And if you want to find out more about your clarity, your confidence, and your courage, go ahead and get my book, and you can find it at heatherpenny.com. Cheering you all on.